Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be ranking the initial 6 cars from the Criminal Enterprises DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now these cars are getting ranked in terms of overall usefulness, bang for your buck, and simply which cars are best. Now if you've never seen one of my ranking videos before, there is something that you must know. This list is 100% factual and cannot be argued with. Everything that I say is the absolute truth and nothing but the truth. And if you disagree, you are simply wrong. If you agree to these terms and conditions, we can continue with the video. If not, you should exit off immediately. Anyway guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the worst vehicle from the DLC so far. The worst car of the DLC so far is the Lampaddy Corsa. Now the Corsa, don't get me wrong, very cool car. I don't think that it's necessarily bad in any real way. The only thing is the handling is not as good as you would maybe hope for. That's not to say it's a terrible car, the acceleration is still good, it is pretty light, it's got good customization, looks cool. Overall, it is a pretty good vehicle. However, out of the 6 vehicles that we got today, I feel like it is the weakest. It comes in at $1.8 million, which is a fair price considering its performance. However, I don't think that it's a very notable car for its category. I definitely don't think it's going to be one of the fastest cars in its category. And for these reasons, I don't think it's the best car from the DLC. I think it is probably the worst so far. However, that's not to say it's going to be the worst car out of all of the cars in the DLC when they all release. So right now, it is the worst car. However, I have a feeling it's going to remain probably within the top 10 best cars once all 18 vehicles do actually get released. So that's it for the Lampaddy Corsa. It is our vehicle at number 6. Let's move on to the next best vehicle from the DLC. Up next for the 5th best vehicle added within the Criminal Enterprises DLC, we have the Buckingham Canada. Now this thing goes for $1.8 million if you have the trade price unlocked, or $2.5 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. Now this vehicle could have been a lot higher if it had 2 things. The first of those being weaponry. I was assuming that this thing was going to have some sort of weapons that you could add to it, maybe missiles, maybe machine guns, or even maybe just bombs. However, it has none of these things. So this is pretty unfortunate. Now the other thing that this thing could have, that it doesn't have, is a stealth mode or any sort of special capability. Basically this helicopter just seats 4 players and that's about it. This thing is basically a glorified Super Velito. The only thing that it's got that's really different is it doesn't have a tail rotor, it's just got kind of a jet that blows it either way. That's unique, I guess. But for $2.5 million, your money could definitely be better spent. You could even spend the money on other vehicles from this DLC, and I think they'd overall be a more useful addition to your vehicle collection in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now that's not to say that this helicopter is completely worthless. I do think that this thing is extremely fast. I'm not sure where this thing ranks in terms of top speed for helicopters yet, but when I find out I will surely make a video about it. But my prediction is that this thing is probably within the top 5 fastest helicopters in Grand Theft Auto Online. On top of that, when you are flying this thing in a straight line going forwards, it does tend to ascend rather than descend, and this is a great feature. This means that when you're going at full tilt, your helicopter is not in danger of crashing into the ground because you're going so fast. Instead, it will climb and avoid danger. So this is a good thing. Now, I'm not sure if this thing is permanently going to be an unarmed helicopter. I have a feeling that there may be weapon options hidden behind some sort of new mission that came out with this DLC. However, I have no confirmation of this, so I can't really say for certain. What I can say for certain is that your money could be better spent on something else. Even a Buzzard is a better helicopter than this because at least it's armed. So overall, the Buckingham Canada is not that good of a helicopter, and it's really not that good of a vehicle. Overall, it is the 5th best vehicle from this DLC so far. However, I feel like this ranking is going to drop off significantly once the other 12 vehicles get released. So that's it for the Canada. Let's move on to the 4th best vehicle that was released today with the DLC. For our number 4 vehicle, we of course have the Bravado Greenwood. Now the Greenwood is an interesting vehicle because it's a vehicle that has Imani tech capabilities. So you can add armor onto the side of this thing to make it have bullet resistant windows, as well as being able to shrug off a few missiles, which is pretty nice. And of course it does have Imani tech, so you can either equip it with a missile lock-on jammer or a remote control device. Now these are really unique options for a car that is so old. I wouldn't expect this thing to have those options, but of course it does. Now the Greenwood gets a better ranking than the other 2 previous vehicles simply because it does have a missile lock-on jammer capability, which is a huge asset in Grand Theft Auto Online, making this thing a lot more useful in free mode than the other 2 vehicles. Now unfortunately, that's about where the Greenwood's good points end. It has semi-decent handling, especially for an old muscle car, and it also has pretty good acceleration, and the top speed is alright as well. However, it's not necessarily the most useful vehicle in my opinion. It is of course a 4-seater, so you can have some more people riding with you in this thing than you can in some of the other Omni Tech vehicles, for example. However, the Bravado Buffalo STX also has Omni Tech and is certainly a faster muscle car. And the other thing that stops this thing from getting a better ranking is this vehicle, along with the Obey e-tron GT, do not actually have a machine gun option that you can add on to them, unlike the rest of the Omni Tech vehicles. So that is kind of a huge disadvantage. The regular Omni Tech vehicles get the dual mounted machine guns on the front of them, which deal out a pretty significant amount of damage, and these do not get anything. They do, however, get the proximity mine oil slick dropper, which is pretty useful, however, not as useful as the machine guns. It would be nice if it had both, but of course it only has the one. So the Bravado Greenwood is the 4th best vehicle that got released today with the DLC. I have a feeling this thing is going to remain in the upper rankings of all of the vehicles, however, I don't think that it's going to place as well as number 4, but we'll just have to see. So that's it for the Bravado Greenwood. Let's move on to car number 3. Next up, for the 3rd best vehicle from this DLC, we have the Obey Omni EGT. Now typically I don't rank electric cars very well within Grand Theft Auto Online, however this thing does have a saving grace. It of course also has Omni Tech, and it also has an armor upgrade. So as you guys can see, there's armor on the sides of this thing, and this thing is slightly better than the Greenwood because of one very simple factor. It has all-wheel drive, whereas the Greenwood is only rear-wheel drive. Now rear-wheel drive is good. However, on an old muscle car, it is a little bit treacherous, perhaps we could call it. Now, the e-tron GT does of course have all-wheel drive. It also, because it is electric, has insanely fast acceleration. Now, it's insanely fast up to a very, very low point for top speed. The top speed on this thing is absolutely piss weak, which is very unfortunate, but it is very typical of electric vehicles, especially within GTA. Now the EGT, I'm not a super huge fan of this thing, but as far as usefulness goes, I do think that it is more useful than the Greenwood and the other 2 previous vehicles mentioned before the Greenwood. The handling is not that great on this vehicle, however the acceleration makes up for it, I would say, and it also does have all-wheel drive, so you can pull yourself out of a corner very, very quickly, and you can also get off of the line extremely quickly. On top of that, it is also a 4-seater, so you can have some more people in it with you, similar to the Greenwood, but just kind of in a better package in my opinion. So that's pretty much it for the Obey Omni EGT. It's good for the environment, and it's about $1.8 million, so it's only slightly more expensive than the Greenwood. However, the Greenwood with the trade price is only $1 million, so you could save yourself $800K and just go for that instead of this. But my true best advice is to go and pick up the Bravado Buffalo STX instead, because it's just simply better than both of them. Anyways, that's it for the Obey Omni EGT. Let's move on to the 2nd best car from the DLC so far. The 2nd best car from the DLC is the Pegasi Torreira X0. Now I really wanted to give this thing the number 1 ranking, however I just feel like it's not quite the best car. And now of course you guys can go ahead and assume what the best car is. Now, the Pegasi Torreira X0 is a really, really nice car. It's got great customization, it's very, very quick, and it goes for $2.9 million, making it the 2nd most expensive vehicle from this DLC so far. However, I do feel like the price tag is semi-justified. This thing performs very, very similar to the Pegasi Ignis, however, I do believe that this thing is much better looking. And I also believe that this thing accelerates harder and potentially has slightly better handling. And I could go ahead and assume that it also probably has a slightly better top speed than the Ignis because its acceleration is also better. Now my only complaint with the Torreira X0 is the handling could be a little tiny bit better, I feel like, for $2.9 million. It's just not quite what you would expect. However, it does have all-wheel drive, which is a big help, and it also has relatively good downforce at a high speed, it seems like, so it can kind of get a pass. The Torreira looks absolutely fantastic. I think it is truly one of the best looking supercars in Grand Theft Auto Online at this current moment. I'm interested to see what else gets added with this DLC, but for right now, I feel like this thing is going to be ranked very, very highly among the other vehicles in the DLC. I do think that this thing is also going to be within the top 10 fastest supercars in the game, but we'll just have to wait and find out. More testing definitely needs to be done. So the Torreira X0 for $2.9 million is a pretty good car, I have to say. I do definitely recommend this thing. However, not the most out of all the DLC cars. So with that being said, let's move on to the number 1 car from the Criminal Enterprises DLC. And the number 1 vehicle from the Criminal Enterprises DLC so far is of course the Benefactor LM87. Now this is a really interesting car. It is of course a full-blown race car. It's also a one-seater vehicle, which is extremely rare to get these days in Grand Theft Auto Online, so I do feel like this is a pretty unique vehicle. It reminds me heavily of the RE7B from the Cunning Stunts update, which was a very dominant car for a long time in the supercars category. It is my belief that the LM87 is going to be one of the new fastest supercars in the entire game around most circuits, so long as they are very twisty. It has a pretty good top speed, I feel like, but the acceleration is even better. And even better than both of those is of course the handling. This thing has so much downforce, it's actually quite hard to spin out at high speed. Obviously, as you guys saw, I just hit a Mustang right there. For the most part, it's pretty easy to avoid doing that. Apparently I just suck at driving. The LM87 is definitely my number 1 pick for the best car from this DLC so far. It is also the most expensive vehicle from the DLC, by a very slight margin over the Torreira X0. This thing comes in at just over $2.9 million, which is a lot of money. However, I do feel like this is going to be the number 1 fastest supercar in the entire game for a long time. It has insanely good downforce, it has very good acceleration, and it also has a pretty respectable top speed, I feel like. So there's really nothing to dislike about the LM87. This is definitely the number 1 car that I would recommend picking up from this update, especially if you care about car performance. This is a very clear winner to me. So there you have it, guys. Those are the initial 6 DLC cars ranked in order of worst to best. Let me know that I'm right in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you didn't. Subscribe if you guys are new. I'm going to be ranking all of these cars again once all 18 have been released in a few months. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.